sanctuary. When we're done, you're going to pick up your jar. You got your box of matches. We got you some foil. And you're going to go home now and feel issues to actions. Now, when I did it, we did it, and I went to a retreat and I talked about it, and I put it on Facebook because so many people were just helped by it. Do you want to talk about y'all's experience with it?
I can. So I was, when I moved to Houston, I was a part of the praise team at the church that I was at, and we were having some issues gelling with one another. We were fighting, everybody wanted to be the leader, nobody wanted to be a part of the team. So I presented this to them after I had seen on Joe's post, and we did it as a group, a praise team group, and we kind of wrote down all of the issues that we were having personally that could be affecting our ministry, and then as the issues that we were having as a group. And so once we did that, we went through the whole process of writing them down. We didn't share them with one another. We kept them private. But then in our own, ceremonial ritual, we went through the whole process of going outside and burning them. And once we burnt them, we made a commitment and a vow to ourselves to let them go. And then together as a group, we took a picture of us, of ourselves holding our ashes. Yes. As a reminder to ourselves that all of the issues that we had personally and then together as this group, we had given them to God, and we let them go, and we burned them, and we were no longer going to hold them and bring them into the environment that we were in, trying to worship and trying to be leaders of worship, so that we could effectively do what God had called us to do. And when I tell you that it blessed our ministry and we were able to go forth, and it just gave our entire praise team just a completely different worship experience when we were able to minister without all of that baggage, holding on to our personal baggage and then our baggage as a group. We were able to let that go. So.
Amen. Amen. Deborah, do you want to share what it did for you?
Pretty much I came in unknowing, and she said she had mentioned
a little bit louder.
She mentioned to me what she wanted to do, and I had agreed. And I had to go because I had not thought about it, but I had some things that were burdening me, and so I wrote down on my obituary, and we burned it. But it was freeing. It was extremely freeing because, although it was historical, because some of the things that I kept doing in relationships is what I identified, and that's what I had done. And moving forward in relationships, I know and am aware of those things. So again, it was great.
Another thing that was part of it was a prayer. It was a corporate prayer. We prayed together, but I really got chills because when I got the message, that Liz had done that and what it had done for their group, I didn't even know that this thing that helped me was going to help people. And then there were other people in San Antonio, because I asked them to share their experience. If you do it, share with us what it's done for you. So I had not thought about Issues to Ashes in years until I decided to come, that this might be something for you individually, each one of you to experience, or if you want to partner with someone you trust. But again, you don't know what's on somebody else's obituary. So, and then saving the obituary, I just took a screenshot. And I did save it, printed it out, but I took a screenshot. But saving it helped me to remember what I am growing from. Because in grief, in loss, in trauma, I talk to people who have, a lot of my people who come in to talk have molestations, they have domestic violence, they're in relationships that are not safe. A lot of young women like in their 40s, and I grieve for them but for the grace of God. And so as our community, as we lament for God to release us from these things that are not of Him, and to reconcile us through our relationships with Jesus and make us the ambassadors that brings other people in. So that part of that burning helps us to remind ourselves that we're the ones that are going to help save folk. But we have to be transparent with ourselves, and lamenting requires that. If we're not transparent, if we're not honest, if we're not real, if we're not truthful, God can't do nothing with us. So that's what we would have done today, and like I said, we got enough for you all to take with you to do it, and I would love for you to share with, if you want to share among each other, how, with people you trust, that how that went and what that did for you. And you don't have to, because I told them, don't do it until you have, and tonight might have been too quick, because I did say, don't do it until you have everything on you that you need that on there. So I did tell you, don't do it until you're ready to do it. So yes. Any questions, comments? The rest of this is, oh wait, oh. 1 Peter 5:10-11 says, after you have suffered for a little while, the God of all what? Grace. The God of all what? Grace. Who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself do what? Restore,
confirm, strengthen, and establish.
God does not lie. He cannot lie. After you've suffered for a little while, the God of all grace will restore you. He will renew your life. He will transform you. He will deliver you, and he will help you to be able to help other people. That is, there's scriptural references for you. There's resources. And these are, I mentioned the top 10 stressors, which translates to things that can grieve us. So what we're going to do now is Ms. Deborah is going to lead us in a liturgy. And we're going to pray together, and then we'll dismiss.
I just want to make one statement before we go into the prayer.
Yes, please.
You mentioned that the church to be a safe place. And I think we always have to be reminded as leaders and as Christians, to always be intentional about creating a safe environment for people to come into the church to lament, to express how they're feeling, or just to be present. Because one of the things that I've noticed, in just helping people through grief, when there's a situation that's traumatic, the first place that people pull away from is the church, because they don't want to be judged for going through. So I think we just have to be reminded and be intentional about, creating an atmosphere for people to want to come here. I think about grieving the loss of my parents, and the only place that I could find comfort in was the church. Just being active and involved and around the people, has really been the only thing that has kept me. So just to be mindful as Christians and as leaders that, people are coming to the church with all of their issues of life, with all of their traumas, and to always be mindful that you never know what somebody's going through at that time, but just to create an atmosphere for somebody to be comfortable in lamenting.
You made me think of a situation that happened at the church I was growing up in. I was in the choir, and one particular Sunday, one of the choir members, key choir member, came in very, very late. And the way that she had to get in, she had to step over people to go get to her seat. We were already in worship, what have you. And people were talking, and they were saying stuff. I was about 14. And I remember finding out that woman's husband was beating her every day, especially when she was trying to come to church. And so you never know what it took for somebody to get up and put their clothes on and make their way here. You don't know what it took. You yourself know what it took for you to get here.
Yes.
And so when people come to this church or any church, you know, it should be a place of no judgment. And I said earlier, from one end of the pew to the other, it's at least 50 different issues that are happening. And one of the things we don't do well as Christians, devout, stalwart Christians, is we don't want nobody to know we hurt.
Amen.
And that is detrimental. It's detrimental. And when we're in community, so you were talking about a lot of us in the church, people know, you know, some of the things about, you know, what's happened or the losses, because by nature of just being here. I ought to be able to come here and feel love. You might not agree with me, you might not even like me, but I'm a child of God, and this ought to be my safe space. I ought to be able to come here and lament and worship, and walk away with hope and faith. And that's an important thing, you know, and we all feel that way. I'm just saying, I know I feel that way. When my husband died, and I went back to church, and I had people coming up saying silly things to me. Oh, when you look so good, you just all dressed up. I'm like, I'm not the one that died. I got mad because you're talking like I'm supposed to be in the grave with him. You're hurting me. I remember when I got meningitis, encephalitis, I should have been dead, it was truly. And I got back and I still had this tube. They were treating me, and there was this big tube in my neck. And this lady came up and said, "You're not contagious, are you?" All my life was in trauma. And I said, "Do you really think I'd be here if I was going to make somebody sick?" And God gives you grace to brush that stuff off. Yes, He does. God gives you grace, but why should we have to go through that? You know, so it really made me compassionate about how I talk to people. Somebody could be gone a month. Where you been? How are you doing?
Yes.
How are you doing? No, really. You know, we missed you. Do you need anything? You know, because sometimes people won't call, and we don't know. Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, Liz.
I think that we just have to be discerning. We have to use that gift of discernment as well, so that when we are in the presence of somebody that might be hurting. You know, can I just share something really quickly? I had lost my job in 2004, and my mother was also diagnosed with cancer. They had given her 6 months to live. My father had been diagnosed with cancer. My daughter had run away. And financially, you know, my savings was being depleted. I was out of work, gainful work, out of my career job for 7 years. And I remember in about year 5 or so, we were doing prison ministry. And I reported to prison ministry as I would normally do, but with a very contrite, well, not even contrite, but very heavy, burdened heart. And thank God for my brothers who would go into the male side, I would go into the female side, and they noticed me and they asked me what's going on, and I couldn't speak because I just couldn't. And they said, when we come out, we're going to pray for you. We're going to walk around. I think I was just telling you this the other day. Walk around the parking lot and we're going to wail to God for you. And they did. They did. And, you know, it was though, you know, the sea opened up. Because it's not that everything got better at that moment, but my spirit was lifted at that moment. They were able to detect or discern what was going on with me. I didn't tell them. They didn't know. But they did. And so we have got to be aware of what's going on with the person sitting beside us.
And it's asking God to give you that compassion and that understanding You don't have to know the details.
Amen.
You know? You know, if you say, how can I pray for you? And they just say, just pray for my family, then just, God, you know. I am just so overwhelmed right now that you all have come out twice. Everybody was here last night just about to receive this. When Liz asked me to do it, it's like a lot of stuff going on, but when I got ready to sit down, and I just asked God, I don't know everything that you're dealing with, but I know how grief feels. You know, I don't know all the losses you had, but I know that God can sustain you. And I know He can put a smile back on your face. He can put hope back in your heart. No matter how long the season feels, you know, no matter how many questions or how much we lament, at the end of the day, my God loves me. And He wants the best, and He has plans for me, and they're not plans to harm me. The Israelites stayed in Babylonia for 70 years. And God knew how long He was going to keep them there. But they were expected to produce and to keep working, to keep growing, and to keep planting. So when the season was over, they were ready. And so the season that you're in, lament and worship. Lament and grow. So that when the time is ready, you are ready. Whatever it is, personally, corporately, whatever it is, God expects you to be producing. Yeah, it does. Anybody else?
I have a question. I was listening to you last night online because I wasn't able to come. But I looked at how you said take the paper and fold it in half, and one side grieving and one side for now. But listening to everybody earlier talking about what is grieving. Like grieving can be a loss of a friendship. It can be a pet, you know, it can be somebody that you love. I deal with a lot of grief, a lot of grief. But one thing you said tonight I never thought of is when you said a delayed, you know, griever. Because one time here at this church, I never forget when I was in Sunday school, I lost my brother. I never put on my phone, and for some reason, I forgot to turn it off. And I got that phone call. And it was just interesting how my family and people received me, because they had never seen me grieve. And they thought, like, wow, she grieved harder when she lost her brother than her mother. But I've always had to be that stronghold for the family. And what I thought was interesting, I'm the baby of the family. Even with my mother, everybody was running around. And it was like, you know, Ruby do this, Ruby do that, Ruby got the mortuary. I was even the last one to get home. And I said, did anybody release Mama's body? Did anybody do this? Did anybody do that? I learned that I couldn't wait because I had to do everything. It was like everybody was leaving it up to me. And I still feel that way today. Even, I hate to say this, but even at my own church. So what Elizabeth said, very important. Because you should feel that you belong in your church, but your church can make you feel like you really don't. Instead of making you feel warm and welcome, they can make you feel totally the opposite. I try not to judge anybody, but it's fascinating the people that judge me. And I feel I'm big as life. If you want to know about me, ask me. I'll answer anything you want to know. But don't be saying this about me and that, or thinking this or that. So that's something I grieve too,
Yeah.
that people do to me.
Yeah,
And it hurts.
that's real.
So I think of choir rehearsal one night, Pastor Matt came to rehearsal, and we was singing about God. And he said, looking at your face, it don't look like you guys love God, you know? So he was trying to tell us how it was a ministry, you know, how we minister to others. And I think sometimes people in church forget. They forget. I hate to say that. But they don't know the people that they hurt and how they treat them. So many times I have told my husband, I don't want to go back to church. I don't want to go back. These are the people supposed to be praying for me and love me. I even think when I had my surgery recently, I listened to them welcome people back, that they just welcome back because they miss them or like them. I didn't hear one person say, welcome back, Sister McKinney. You know, I listen. It's just interesting to me. If people don't understand, grief is something that just doesn't consist of death. You know, it has a lot to do with what you're going through and how people treat you. And I think it was really fascinating to me when you said delay, because I think I always have to delay how I feel. Like you said, you went to the park, you played the music. I've done it many times because I felt I couldn't do it in front of other people, because I've always had to be strong for them. I had to always, even when I hurt myself, my grandson said, he's only 17. But he said, I never thought I'd live to see you the way you are. And it shows you right there, it's almost like he felt like, you know, I could never break down, or I never could feel this, or I never, and I do. So thank you for that, because I never realized I delayed on everything. Because I feel like I have to be strong for everybody.
My prayer for you is the part that we talk about self-care, because we feel like we're being selfish, but we're not. You're not going to be selfish to step back, Ruby, and let Ruby heal. When you get cut on, deep cut surgery, how does it heal?
From the inside out.
From the inside out. So it's your spirit, your emotions, everything has to heal from the inside out for you to be a whole person. Right? Allow yourself. If nobody else is going to look out for that, you and the Lord look out for that. Ask the Lord to give you the strength to meet these challenges in a way that glorifies Him and helps people, but make sure that you are healthy, that you're having good grief, healthy grief. Church hurt is a grief. Church hurt, every church, there is no church that is established in this world. No denomination, no structure where there aren't people who are being dismissed, neglected. But I choose to look at the ones who do speak, who do say out. If it's just one person out of 99 people, that one person that noticed me and said, how you doing? And the rest of it, I'm going to try to show them a better way. How you doing? Hi. Because what we put out, people notice, especially at church. They notice. I've spoken people into speaking to me. They just try hard. Hey, how you doing? 100 times, and that 100th time, they're like, hello. I got you. But I feel what you're saying, and my prayer is that the people that are in here tonight are seeing and hearing your heart. And if don't nobody else pray for you and want you and welcome you, this group in here has heard your heart.
Amen.
Yes. You bond here. Anybody else? Thank you for sharing.
Well, one thing I try to do, for some people in witnessing, no matter what I'm going through, I feel like love. What love is when you love and care about everybody else not like you. So I feel more like being there for almost 3 months. All I could think of when I was listening online, like send them a card, send them a word of encouragement. And I love it, but it still hurts when, it's like you're invisible, and it hurts. I try to do right, I talk to God, I repent if I do anything wrong, in that way. These people, these church, and another way. And I agree with that. I do.
I hear you. I really feel really witness was the person who brought me to me was I was active in the military at the time. And I remember coming to church maybe the second time and something was going on that I just really didn't understand. And it kind of just brought me back to, and I kind of even feel the same way about when she came to church that day. Well, I fell a couple of weeks behind Ruby, and I tried to ignore it, make sure that okay, this is not happening. I came on to church, and then that night I ended up going to emergency room, but knowing what had happened to Ruby, because she had to have surgery, that was my fear. Yeah, because I didn't know. You don't want all that stuff happening too. And the same thing that when someone actually made that comment to me that same very day, you were already here. And I hobbled in. And all of that, when they got up in the pulpit, and now there's somebody that hadn't been back, and somebody that, and then they have this, one or two people to pray, but we gotta write our names on a card now and tell them to pray for us when we come in. But when I come here, when I came in that day, all I wanted to do was sit down. My foot hurt, and I was hoping that I could pray it off and that I didn't break it, and any of that. And they're standing right up there doing devotion or whatever was going on. I said, now they see me hobble right in here, but someone actually came up to me right behind after service and said, I'm so sorry. They said, what about you, Ruby? They see it all?
Okay, so that part of it, and I'm sorry,
But
I need to stop you there because those are true griefs. That's a reality for you. And something is real until you decide that you're going to alter the way that you think about it. So I want to encourage you to pray, to ask God to show you intuitively, discerningly, how can I glorify you and turn this thing around?
Yes.
Maybe there is somebody else that has not been addressed and I can go address them.
Yes.
Maybe there's somebody else feeling like I feel, so let me make them feel. So they don't experience that. God sees that. God sees how you're treated. Think of the story of Hagar. Elroy, the God who sees me, he sees that. And my encouragement to you is the church's community, and just like any other family, it is not perfect. I got cousins I barely talk to, but I love them. If they call me, I'll go, but I don't talk to them. The reality is we're not going to have perfect relationships. Ain't nothing perfect about our church but Jesus.
Amen.
When I walked into it, I made it imperfect as a structure, but Jesus is the Lord. He's the head of the church. And so if I'm feeling that way, that means somebody else is. Let me find those people who feel that way and pour into them. That's my suggestion. Church hurt is real, I get it. But I encourage you to ask God to look at that thing. Okay. We're ready for the liturgy. You all have received so what I thought would be good is if we could manage to maybe, though some can't stand, but maybe if we could circle together. Y'all feel like, if you can't stand, we'll circle where you are. Some of us